This view from a hotel room in the French Mediterranean city of Toulon is a great view to draw, but it's a challenging view to draw in 10 minutes because there is a fair bit of detail and there's a fair bit of angling, perspective angling, which if we don't get right is going to look, well, not right. However, it's the sort of scene that it's great to be able to capture in a really quick drawing if we do like to do location sketching. Lovely spot to sit for 10 minutes and do a quick sketch. But the challenge is to eliminate the detail so that it's achievable and we don't get bogged down drawing the innumerable small individual objects or parts of this that we could. Because learning to simplify is a really important skill in drawing, particularly when we draw complex scenes such as streetscapes and architecture. And so having to draw this within a 10-minute or 12 or 15, 20-minute framework time period is a great way of helping us, I think, to learn to simplify because we can't draw it all. But what we get trained to do in trying to draw a scene such as this in this short period is to get experience in thinking and making choices and then experimenting with what we leave out and what we include. What are the parts of this scene that are essential to put in to actually capture the scene, and what parts can we safely leave out that actually declutter it a bit and help us to appreciate what we're looking at? So that's my challenge. The other challenge with this scene is to not widen it out. A lot of the appeal of this, I think, personally, from a composition point of view, is the narrowness of the view and the narrowness of the various objects that we're seeing. And that's partly because of the perspective angles that we're seeing them at, and it's partly because it is a very narrow street. So I don't want to spread widthwise, and I only have to spread a little bit with each of the elements, with this louver window on the right and then the building to the left of it and then the gap in the street where we can see a bit further up and then this wall on the left of the orange building and then that final bit of orange wall where it changes direction. If I go wide just a little bit in each of these elements, then that's going to be a problem because that will add up to a reasonable amount of width that will start to visually change the impact of what we're seeing. So that's a challenge. Now, I spent quite a long time for a 10-minute drawing on this louver window, but I felt that the shadows were important to give a sense of exactly what we're looking at, and also the angles were a bit tricky. I didn't quite get it right in that thicker center piece. But having used a 0.3 millimeter for this louver window, because I wanted to be able to get it looking a bit darker more easily and more quickly, I've now switched to a 0.1 millimeter pen to get a lighter feel for this building behind, because this is one of the further elements of my scene, and so I don't want it to feel close. I want there to feel as though there's a gap, a distance between the line work of the louver window and the building beyond. And also the building on the other side of the street is a lot closer. So I want that also to feel closer as well than this building. So using a 0.1 millimeter pen worked out quite well because I could do some light guidelines without them looking too obvious at the end. Now, one little trick that I'll let you in on for my method of when I have, say, 4 rows of windows, such as this, I firstly make great care that the upper angle and the lower angle from a perspective point of view are correct. And then I position the lowest row of windows and the uppermost row of windows. Now in this case, that leaves me then 2 rows of windows to put in between. And so on one of the sides, the side usually that from a perspective point of view is shorter, I then put some dots, and you can see me doing it now, to position the 2 rows so that they sit evenly between the rows I've already placed. And I find this is a great way of having nice even rows of windows. Now, I still need to get the perspective angles correct. It's not just fitting the space at the left-hand side, but it's getting that fan-shaped pattern of angles as we move up or down. And so that's what I'm doing. But you can see I've greatly simplified the windows. I'm not really trying to draw a window with shutters on each side, even though the shutters are a quintessential part of this city and how it looks. It's really quite a part of the charm and of the weather and the condition and the history and the architecture. But I do have a large louver window or a large shutter, I suppose it is, on the right-hand side, and I will be drawing more detail of the shutters on that building on the left, which is a lot closer. So I don't need to get bogged down trying to do shutters on this wall. And if I did, it would probably just look too cluttered and therefore attract too much attention, and that will in effect visually bring it forward, which I'm not wanting to do. I'm wanting to push it back. Now I've switched back to my 0.3 millimeter pen, I'm pretty sure, at this stage. And now I'm just positioning this wall. Now this closest wall, that particularly orange looking part on the lower left, I actually ran that too wide. So my talk of keeping things nice and tight, at the last minute I lost attention and just went a bit too wide, but that's something good to know. Now I'm starting to get concerned about time. I think I've used up half my time at this stage. So I'm now becoming very quick, very gestural, and really just very outliney-ish of this. But I certainly want to get these beautiful rounded terracotta tiles suggested in their shape and form, and often using shadows is an important part of this. Now, I'm not particularly worried about shade in this drawing because I just don't have time to put the hatching in, but I do want to do that shadow that's on that central building in the background, the one that comes right up next to the shutter on the right. So that will take a bit of time. So now, again, I'm a few guidelines in. It's a mistake to think that when we draw directly in pen, we can't do some guidelines. However, we need to do the guidelines and then the final line work over the top of them, or using those guidelines with a technique or a strategy to minimize visually the effect of the guidelines at the end. But in this case, there's pretty much going to be none of the guidelines visible anyway, because between the window spaces and the shutters, there really is no gap between what we're seeing on the front of the building. Now, if you look closely at what I've done there for this top row of windows, you'll see that I really haven't even got bogged down in positioning the windows very carefully. And the shutters, one of the most important things was simply to suggest that they come out from the building, to get a sense of three dimensions with them, because visually that is an important part of the streetscape. They do sit out from the buildings when they're open. Of course, they're flush with the buildings when they're shut, but that's not the look that's happening here. Now, I wanted to again just hint at the terracotta rose on this roof, and that's enough. Sometimes more is less. Now, I've gone back to my 0.1 millimeter pen to do this very furthest building, and I think I was like 9.5 minutes at this stage when I look, so I'm starting to get into a bit of a flap. But it also stops me from getting too bogged down with this further section, because I simply don't have time to. I really have to be suggestive. So I'm almost at the end of my 10 minutes. I'm just working out how these windows line up with the building I've already done, but I decide that I don't really have time to look too much about that. Now, of course, if you're doing this as a drawing exercise yourself, it doesn't matter if you take 15 minutes instead of 10 or even 20 minutes, but give yourself a time limit and try and keep it. Now, at this point, my 10 minutes is up. I still wanted to do some line work for the shade and the shadow. So I've now put this at double time because it is a bit laborious to watch and it is very straightforward to do. So we've gone past, so in the 10 minutes, I was able to, I think, capture the feel of the street and the major elements. But I thought it was just worth playing around with a little bit of hatching to helpfully give the street a sense of 3 dimensions a little bit more. And then I decided to do the window at the left, and again I should have taken it just a bit closer to the edge of the building. And for me, I have the added bonus of wonderful memories of a brief but really enjoyable visit to this Mediterranean French city. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you've been enjoying these videos, these 10-minute drawing videos. 10 minutes a day really is great practice. As you can see, I'm just adding a few more details with some shade for the louvers here, just to balance what I've done underneath and to just help them sit more 3-dimensionally. But yeah, now the way to use these, the best way to use these videos is not to draw along with me. If you do that, the temptation, or even the most straightforward thing to do, will be to focus on my line work and to copy my lines line for line. And at best, this is going to teach you to copy what I do. But the real challenge in drawing a scene such as this is working out what lines I need to put where. It's working out the translation of photo into line work, particularly simplifying in a 10-minute drawing. And so if you just copy my line work, then there's no practice at doing that. And that really is the challenging creative task of any drawing. I think about 85% of good drawing happens before the ink hits the paper. It's observing our reference carefully enough and then working out how we will capture whatever it is in that reference that we want to draw in our marks and our lines. So can I suggest that you do that? You watch the video, you watch my strategies, but then in your drawing, watch the reference and do your drawing from the reference, not from what I've done. But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, we do it to have fun. So make sure you have fun. I'll see you next video. Bye.